What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Get Back. My name is Daniel, and this is our NHL weekly recap show. We talk about all things NHL all the time. Let's get into it. Bit of a busy week. We're post now Olympics, so we're getting back into the thick of it with the NHL season, which is wrapping up relatively quickly. About maybe like 3, 4, 5 weeks left in the regular season. So a lot of games coming very fast and furious. A lot of teams moving up and down very quickly as we get into seedings and wild card races and stuff like that, and especially in the East and even in the West now, both divisions, all four divisions, both conferences are heating up. But there is a particular game I want to highlight, a game that I'm deeming to be one of the best games so far this year, if not for a while. It was a very, very fun game. We have to go all the way back to Sunday, March, I believe, 8th. Yeah, March 8th, as we had a division rivalry between the Buffalo Sabres and Tampa Bay Lightning, in which saw the Buffalo Sabres win 8-7. So how did we get here? Initially looked at the scoring and think, oh, this was a very high scoring game. Both teams kind of, showed their big strength with their offenses, and they were able to kind of flex their muscles in that regard. There was no Vasilevsky for the Lightning, so you would think Buffalo kind of had their way. This game was everything of a very, very potential playoff matchup should be leading towards. It was a preview, if you want to call it that, maybe towards that eventually. It could be highly likely, it could be a second round, even Eastern Conference Final matchup. That could be a stretch, but I think both teams do have the capability. Tampa Bay, they added some pieces at the deadline. They added Corey Perry. They added some more veteran leadership, some depth in that regard. Buffalo had a big deadline. They added a lot of talent, a lot of grit, a lot of veteran players. They didn't get any of their star players we thought they were going to get, but they got very good talent, very good depth pieces, and they kept the core of this team together. So it was a really interesting matchup. Josh Stone got the scoring start in the first period, and what seemed like a relatively, tame period from that regard. But then you look at the penalties, and I'm going to list off the penalties in the first period first. So at 4:36, Darren Radish got a slashing penalty called against him. Brandon Hagel got a boarding penalty called against him. Darren Radish got a second penalty for fighting against Rasmus Dahlin, and Dahlin got a fighting major against Darren Radish as well. So that's already 4 penalties on the book for 3 players. And then 4 minutes later, Erik Chernak got called for interference against Josh Norris, which led 30 seconds later to a Sam Carrick fighting Scott Sauerbrunn. Both of them got 5 for fighting. And then, not even 30 seconds later, Charles Edward Asselson got a roughing call against Bowen Byram, and Bowen Byram got a roughing penalty as well. And at the same time, Brendan Hagel was fighting Peyton Krebs, and then Bowen Byram and Charles Edward Asselson both got misconducts for their roughing penalties. And then a minute later, at 10:40, Matthias Samuelsson got a slashing call against Nikita Kucherov, in which Kucherov slashed him back, so they both got offsetting penalties there. And then 5 minutes later, Erik Chernak got on sportsmanlike conduct against Michael Kessinger, and Michael Kessinger got a sportsmanlike conduct called against him, against Erik Chernak. And then a minute and like a half later, Noah Ossenson got an unsportsmanlike conduct against Jonas Johnson. So that is already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 penalties in the first period alone. It's an insane start to a game with 2 teams that aren't really considered rivals. But this was a very fun start to the hockey game. I think both teams are trying to set their own tone and set this kind of mentality of, Tampa Bay was first in the division at the time. Buffalo was second. They both wanted to assert dominance. They both want to kind of establish that, they're the top dog here. And neither side was going to back down. And that continued all the way into the second as we had more penalties called against both teams. As not even 2 seconds into the second period, Michael Kessinger and Erik Chernak fight. And then 4 seconds later, Corey Perry is fighting Beck Melson, so that's already 2 fighting majors. And then a minute 30 later, McDonough is called for high stick against Tuck. Brandon Hagel and Rasmus Dahlin are called 2 minutes each for roughing 2 minutes later. And Owen Power gets high stick and called against him in the 10th minute. But of course now, with penalties comes goals. And boy oh boy, did the second period have a lot of goals. Let's get into it. 2:15 into the game, just in the second period, Justin Zucker gets a power play goal. And then Alex Tuck will get a power play goal 2 minutes later for Buffalo, giving them a 3-0 lead. And Corey Perry get one back for Tampa Bay at about 8 minutes in. And then Alex Tuck, shorthanded, would get a goal for the Sabres, giving them a 4-1 lead. And then Tampa Bay would do what Tampa Bay has done best all year. And that's somehow find a way to just pour on pressure. And find a way to just continue to... They always get to a point in their games where they just apply so much pressure and they stack goals and are able to kind of mount these big comebacks. And they do it again here. At 2:26, the Kucherov power play goal, make it 2-4. 2 minutes later, Zamis Jorgensen's makes it 3-1. And then 17:37, J.J. Moser makes it 4-4. And now we're going into the third period. Tampa Bay has scored 3 straight goals to tie the game before going into the third. Not even a minute in, Nikita Kucherov gets his 34th of the year. He makes it 5-4. Brendan Point, 5 minutes later, makes it 6-4. That is 5 straight unanswered goals from Tampa Bay Lightning to go down from what was 4-1 to now taking the lead 6-4. This is what Tampa Bay does really well. They're able to put pressure on teams, put pressure on defenses. They get so many shots on goal at high volumes, and they make all of them count. They only had about 28 shots in this game, but 7 of them went in for goals. That's a really good percentage clip. They shoot really high percentage shots. They pick their spots, they pick their moments, and they usually make the right decision. This is a veteran team that knows how to make the right decision most of the time, and you see it play out here. You feel that quality, and you feel that pressure, and you feel that, experience oozing out of this Tampa Bay team right now. They're on a big heater, they're on a big high, and they let it ride. And you figure at this point that Buffalo being Buffalo, oh lowly Buffalo, you're just going to kind of, it was a good run, it was a good shout. Tampa Bay's going to kind of, take the game away. They're going to shut Buffalo down, and they're going to kind of see the game out. But this is a different Buffalo Sabre team. This year, this Buffalo Sabre team is fighting back. They made great acquisitions. They made big-time trades. They have a great team right now. They are well-coached, well-disciplined. Sam Carrick gets them back into the game as he breaks that scoring streak of Tampa Bay to make it 6-5. Brandon Hagel would put a 7th up for Tampa Bay to kind of regain momentum. But then Rasmus Dahlin would get one back, making it 7-6. Jason Zucker would get second of the game. He'll make it 7-7. And at 15:43, Josh Doan would get on the power play, would get his second of the game, and make it 8-7. And eventually, that's what the Sabres would end up winning the game by. So it was a very, very impressive closing out performance from Buffalo here. You see what they do really well. You see how Buffalo could fight back into games. They're able to kind of counter pressure. They put a lot of shots on goal. And while Vasilevsky wasn't in the net, that could have made a difference for a couple of these goals. I think it's a big, confidence boost for Buffalo. They can go up against a team like Tampa Bay, who I deem to be the best team in the East, and able to kind of sneak out of here with a win, and maybe even steal the game with a win. But maybe not. Maybe they put enough pressure on. They fought back at home. They didn't back down from Tampa Bay, a more experienced team than them, a Stanley Cup winning team, which they haven't been in the playoffs for almost 2 decades. So Buffalo, you could see it this year. They're a different team. They're a different beast. They want it. They want this playoff berth. And right now they're sitting first in the Atlantic. They want that seeding. They want that first in the division. They want to kind of establish that. And it's kind of hard not to deny them. Like, they're really talented. They're a really talented group that led by Tage Thompson, who had 4 assists on the day and was a -1. Rasmus Dahlin, who's finally coming into his own now. And then you also have the likes of Josh Doe and Jason Zucker, that veteran leadership there. Sam Carrick, a new addition who could kind of help. Alex Tuck, who's been a great trade from the Jack Eichel trade, finally paying dividends. But again, the key is going to be their goaltending and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and how consistent he can be. Because giving up 7 goals on 28 shots is not great. It's not. It's not a great clip. It's not a number that you want. If they're able to kind of limit that and they're able to bring that down and get more consistent goaltending from Luukkonen, I think this team can be very dangerous in the playoffs. I think it's a very, very dangerous team going forward. Matchups will play a big role in it for sure, but they have this. They have a 2-1 lead against Tampa Bay in the season series, so that is very impressive. That's very hard to do. Again, they're first in the Atlantic. They're 4 points clear of Montreal, 2 points clear of Tampa Bay, which they're tied on games played. So it should be a very, very fun sprint to the end of the season to see who comes out on top between these two teams. I think Tampa Bay does have a slight edge in that regard, but you can never count out Buffalo, especially right now. They are playing on an all-time high level, especially at home. They're making that place a fortress. It's been really fun to see Buffalo kind of come back into the league and establish themselves and really just take the league by storm. That's been really cool to see, so shout out to them. This game was really fun. This was a really fun game to watch and break down, and just see two really high elite level teams in an early kind of preview to the playoff situation where both these teams are now starting to gear up for that situation where you're starting to see teams right now where they are playing higher competition. It's really intriguing because you really want to see how they match up against other playoff teams and where they stand. And both of them seem pretty ready. Both of them seem pretty legit. So it should be a fun playoff series if we get to that. Or for their first round opponents, should be very fun. It's gonna be really good. So shout out to Tampa Bay and Buffalo. This was a fun game. Probably right now for me, game of the year. But this was a really good, really fun Sunday night game to watch. Let's talk about two teams that I think are going opposite directions. We've done this a little bit on the show, but I think we've highlighted these teams before as well. But I think it's a good kind of revisit time. I think it warrants a conversation. It is. Let's start with the team on the down. We're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs here. If you don't know, Austin Matthews has, had a very significant knee injury. He's going to miss the rest of the season. It doesn't help Toronto's situation. Doesn't help that they are almost dead. They are dead last in the Pacific. They're third last in the Eastern Conference. They have won, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Won out of their last 10 games and continue to go on massive losing streaks. They're sitting on 6-7 points. They're 28-27 and 11 overtime losses. Listen, Radko Gudas, who injured Matthews, it is what it is. It's a tough situation. It's an illegal hit, absolutely, but at the same time, I don't think this was him. Matthews going down is not the reason why Toronto is in the situation that they're in. I think Toronto is in a very, very weird situation where they don't know whether they want to be a young team or they want to be a veteran-led team, right? I think Toronto is it's in that middle ground where they are trying to rely on a lot of veteran experience and a lot of veteran presence, and it's just not how good they are. Tavares is not the player he used to be, and William Nylander is having a dreadful year. Austin Matthews has had a decent year on paper, but leadership-wise and captain-wise and locker room-wise, he doesn't seem to be all there. They didn't replace Mitch Marner, which was a big loss in the offseason, and that whole situation, that whole debacle that went down. And you look at teams around them, they got better. Buffalo, Tampa Bay, Montreal, Detroit, Boston, even to a degree Ottawa. And if Florida wasn't hurt, Florida's better than them, right? So on paper, they were probably pegged to be one of the worst teams in their own division, let alone the Eastern Conference. So and I get it, if they played in the West, they would have, they might be in the playoff, they might be in a wild card race, but that's not where they are. They're in the East. And you have to sustain success and you have to sustain winning, and the East is a buzzsaw right now, I get that. But you have to be able to compete in that buzzsaw to really, and I think it's a good thing they got shown this right now. And they made the right move at the deadline. I feel like they kind of sold off some veteran players. They sold off a lot of, you know, dead money, a lot of, big contracts that, maybe weren't as deserving as they should have been. Do I think it leads to a total rebuild in the future for Toronto? Maybe. Maybe it is time. I think the quality of their own division is what's going to be the factor here. I don't see a path for them where they get better in the next year to compete in this division. It is absolutely stacked. Montreal is still young and elite. Detroit's still young and very good. Tampa Bay is the class of this division. Boston's inconsistent, sure, but they have star players that are delivering, And then you have Buffalo, who seem to be, right there competing. And then you can never. And Ottawa's still young. Florida is going to be there next year. Does Toronto have the players to compete in this division? No, they don't. They don't. Austin Matthews is a great star, but he's not enough. John Tavares is past his prime, and William Nylander needs to figure himself out. Outside of that, goaltending is a mess. They haven't had a consistent tender there in years, since probably Jeremy Reiner. Defensively, they're a disaster. They don't really have any decent defender, that's young, that you can really lean on. I mean, OKL is past his prime. Brandon Carlo was decent move on paper that hasn't, worked out. Troy Stretcher has just been bad. It's not a good situation for Toronto. It's not. And I think, Matthew Knies is a decent young player, but outside of him, where's the next generation coming from? Where is the next future of the Toronto Maple Leafs? I think it's time that we see it. I think it's time that maybe we get rid of some of these veteran players. Maybe we get rid of some of these, bigger name contracts. And instead of repurposing them, and instead of, giving assets elsewhere, I think we started getting more younger. They're obviously going to have a high pick in the draft this year. If they're able to get the first overall pick, fine. But I think it's time for Toronto to maybe kind of eat what has been a very, very bad stretch. And I get it. It's tough for Leaf fans to swallow. It's tough for Leaf fans to accept that. But I think it is time. I think it is time for a rebuild. It's time that going to the offseason now, we go with a game plan, we go with an idea, and we come back with we want to be younger and we want to be faster. This isn't a retool, it's a rebuild because it needs to be. You're not competing in this division the next 2 to 3 years with this squad. You're not winning with this squad. You weren't winning with this squad. And you blew up the core already with Mitch Marner. I think it's time that the entire team get blown up. You trade a lot of veteran assets. You bring in what you can. You get younger and you start trying to grow more because what's happening here is not worked. And I think it's time for... You got to suffer to win. You do. And I think Toronto, as much as they've been suffering, it's got to get a little bit worse, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, I think Toronto is... They have to do it. For the future of this franchise and the future of the next 10 years, they have to rebuild and sell off some assets and try to get younger. Because this division has gotten way better, way quicker than everybody thought it was going to, and they're not able to keep up. So, Toronto, rebuild, repurpose, get younger, get better, and grow, and we'll check back on you in 2 or 3 years, see where you're at. Speaking of a team that's been growing, that did rebuild and did suffer for a long time, and now you're starting to see the fruits of that labor and the fruits of that, willingness. The Anaheim Ducks are first place in the Pacific Division. On 75 points, they've overtaken Vegas. They're ahead of Edmonton, and they had some big key wins early on this year. They went on a big winning streak against some very top competition. The Anaheim Ducks are a very unique situation. They've been not a laughingstock, but they've been in a rebuild for a long time. And, they were able to kind of sustain it. They didn't really trade a lot of their young players, They didn't really kind of have any disgruntled, young players there. And they slowly built up this team. They slowly built it up. They had some very key veteran leadership additions like Mikael Grenlund, Chris Kreider, Frank Vetrano, Troy Terry, Rocco Gudis, who's been there for a while, um, Jacob Trouba just last offseason. It's been Peter Mrazek in the goalie room. This has been not a masterclass. I wouldn't say that yet, but it's been a blueprint of how you build up a roster for the past 5 years, where you could accept the losing because your young players are growing and getting better, and you're developing them well, and you're able to kind of build that connection and build that rapport. And these young guys get together and they have a great chemistry, and they're able to fight for each other, and they're all unique and they're all in a different way, and you build up to that strength. Leo Carlson, Mason McTavish, uh, uh, Karaguchie, these are very talented forwards that are playing big minutes. And then you add John Carlson into that room. You add Jacob Trouba into that room. Owens Lewinger is a stud. Lucas Dostal is a nice young goalie, but you add in Peter Mrazek and Husso. It's like you bring in that veteran leadership to kind of supplement it, to kind of guide these young guys. And it's like you bring in like some, old farts. You don't bring in some fossils. You don't bring in some 39-year-old, 38-year-old. Trouba, Kreider, Vetrano, Carlson, Terry, like these guys are still relatively at a decent age where they're able to compete, where they're able to kind of still produce offensively. They're not like, floating around on the fourth line, third line. They're playing major minutes in this offense, and they're playing major minutes on these teams. They're getting power play time. They're getting penalty kill time. It's not that they are the team. They're kind of supplementing what the young players are doing. The young players are still the focal point, but you have a great supporting cast of veterans around them that if they are struggling, they could pick up that slack still because they do have those legs in them. So I think it's a great way to showcase how you can combine young talent and veteran talent and mix motion together to have a very solid team. This is a very solid, Anaheim Ducks team. And I get it, the West, it's the West, especially the Pacific. It's not a great division right now. LA's got their problems. Edmonton's got their problems. Vegas, who I deem to be the best team in this division, they're beatable. They're very beatable. The Kings are struggling. San Jose had a decent run. Seattle's in a playoff spot on 67 points, which is crazy to think about. And then Calgary and Vancouver are terrible. So I get the division is a division. I understand that. But they're winning games. They're winning key games. They're winning big-time games. They're not perfect. I think they could probably use some more scoring, some more defense. They do have some stinkers every now and again. Lucas Dostal he's an okay goalie at times, but he's also a very good goalie at times. But I think the big thing here, I could see Anaheim, especially in this division, in the playoff situation, the playoff brackets. I think they have an opportunity here to maybe make a run at, definitely a second round, maybe even a Western Conference Final. I think it's possible. I think Vegas is beatable. Edmonton's beatable. If the Wild advance somehow, they're beatable. The Stars they're tough assets. That's a tough matchup for them if they do get them. But the Kraken they could beat. The Knights, the Kings they could beat. Like, while the division is not good, they're a top team in their division. Like, don't get that twisted. They are a top team in their division. They are playing at an ultra high level. Leo Carlson has been fantastic. The additions of Trouba and Kreider and Vetrano and now even John Carlson have been great additions, I feel like, especially John Carlson. That's a major move to kind of try to make this franchise into a elite level, push them over the top, and getting Mikhail Granlund back is going to be very, very big for them. I think having that, depth in the center position and be a guy who can win faceoffs and be kind of gritty guy is important. And again, I think overall it's a very solid Anaheim Duck team. They've been playing really well. They're coached really well. Look, I won't be surprised if they do make a West Conference Final. I won't be. I think this is a very solid team. I think they have potential. I think if the matchups are the matchups, I could see them advancing. I really could. Now, are they the top team in the West? Absolutely not. It's Colorado. It's Dallas. They're the top teams in the West. They are. I think one of those two will come out of the Western Conference as the Stanley Cup, contender. But Anaheim, not that they're that far, not that they're close, but they're not that far away. I think if they go into the next offseason, they bring in some key additions, maybe another star winger, or even another decent young player who trade some of these assets, bring in a absolute superstar to this team. Maybe try to get a decent veteran goalie in here who's been around and can have that consistency and take them to the next level, because their biggest problem is going to be the goaltending and Lucas Dostal and how far they're going to go as far as Lucas Dostal takes them. That's my opinion. While Dostal is a decent goalie, I don't think he's all that sometimes. He does have some stinkers, and I think if they get into a playoff series with a high offense and a high pressure team, he's going to struggle. So I think that could be an area to improve. But I don't think they're that far away. I think they've built this team up for a long time. It's been going on almost a decade now. It's been a long time since Anaheim's been in this position. But I think they've done it the right way. They didn't rush it. They didn't, they got people to buy in. They got veteran players to buy into this team. They traded for very decent veteran leadership and decent veteran talent that can still contribute now. And they've done a really good job of showing how you build up a young roster and how you build up a young team. So, want to give credit to Anaheim, first in the Pacific. We'll see how long that lasts, if it lasts to the end of the season, but want to shout out them. They deserve it. They've been playing really well, and it's been a very, very fun season to watch from them. And yeah, like I said before at the start, we're getting to the thick of it. We're starting to get more and more games much more quickly. A lot of teams playing quicker. We have maybe 3 to 4 weeks left. It's almost that time. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see how the standings look at going into next week. Right now, it's very tight. The East is very tight. Teams are holding on by a thread in the wild card race. Suddenly, Ottawa's making a push, which is crazy to think about. Flyers can make a push. Washington's still kind of in it as well. So you have pretty much 12 teams for 6 spots in the Eastern Conference. And, the West is the West. I understand that. But, San Jose's still there. The Kraken are there. Utah's there. Nashville's still in it. Outside shout from St. Louis, but, they sold off a lot on the deadline. But no, these standings are going to look totally different going into next week's episode. I'm excited to see that. I hope you guys are here to see that. I want to say thank you guys for watching. This has been the NHL Hockey Recap with me, Daniel from the Get Back. Great episode. Had a lot of fun. Have any comments, anything you want to talk about, anything you want to learn, anything you want to talk about, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Follow us on social media on TikTok and Instagram at the Get Back Sports. Make sure that you check out other videos as well. Check out the main show on Sundays. We're going to have a very special Oscar live stream. Kind of a fun little thing that we're doing. Check that out as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. But check out also the main show for main sports content and all that good stuff. Great stuff coming down the line. It's going to be a lot of fun. Check out UFC on Saturdays with Lewis. Come here on Fridays for me for NHL. So, been a lot of fun. Thank you guys for listening. I've been Daniel. We'll see you guys next week. See you guys next time. Peace.